Hello and welcome to the Stories of Generation Growth, a new series from Changemakers featuring high growth firms from the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses alumni. I'm Michael Hayman, and throughout this series I'll be joined by my guest Charlotte Keenan, the programme's head. Together we will speak with business leaders who could well be at the heart of a new generation of growth for the UK. But what is generation growth? Well, it's an idea driven by the Small Business Manifesto, a call to action which shares insights and policy ideas on how we can release the potential of high growth companies to thrive. We'll be discussing the key recommendations of that manifesto and how we make them real. Joining us today is Alice Rivers-Cripps, founder and creative director of Posh Totty Designs, crafters of original hand-stamped jewellery. Alice, welcome to Changemakers. Charlotte and I are really looking forward to speaking with you about Posh Totty Designs and I suppose a journey from the Mayans in Mexico to Brighton, the UK and the world. Introduce the business to us.
Well, it's been going on for 20 years. I started it in 2004 after returning from Mexico.
Right.
Having been working with artisans out there and these incredible Mayan jewellers. I came back and I decided to kind of work every evening making bits and pieces. I didn't actually expect it to kind of grow.
What took you to Mexico?
I was travelling around America, fell out with a friend and then rushed off to Mexico in a moment of madness.
Right. Sounds like a film.
It was a bit like that.
And what,
it was incredible.
But I suppose I was thinking, how do you finish up working there as opposed to travelling around there?
Because I'd run out of money. I arrived in Mexico with $60 in my pocket. And I basically it took me 22 months to get back to the UK. And in that time, I did many jobs from a cowgirl on a ranch to working as a chili pepper outside a vegetable shop. And one of the many jobs was actually working with some incredible jewellers. But I didn't really speak the language that well. So I had to learn all of that when I got back to the UK.
You had to learn all of that, but I suppose also a culture where design and creativity and ideas,
so beautiful.
very beauty, I suppose. So,
yeah, incredible.
And how did that shape what was to come next?
I haven't made turquoise jewellery or feathers or anything that I was kind of seeing a lot of out there. I did come back and make my own designs and my own style, but I was always incredibly creative generally at school and growing up, and to be in this beautiful, colourful place was just amazing.
I was going to say, did you have any experience? I mean, had you made jewellery before, or was it something that you learned?
No, but I was always making things out of Play-Doh and Fimo and tin, and I was always making something. Like all of my friends' presents and stuff like that were always made of.
When did you think you could make a business out of a passion?
I wasn't doing so well in the actually being employed market, so I kind of decided.
So you decided you were unemployable. That's it.
So I kind of started there. But yeah, no, I realised that I needed to make some pocket money in the evening, and I was making jewellery for friends and family. And then I realised that I'd created a kind of signature style that people really liked, and it kind of resonated with people. So I was like, okay, let's see how we can
make a business of it. So let's go to the startup. I mean, where did the name come from? How did it all begin?
So interestingly, Posh Totty Designs, nobody really knows the story, but it was actually because I went to boarding school down in the New Forest after getting an art scholarship there, and then my mother couldn't afford to keep me there, so she ended up dropping me into an inner city state school in Nottingham. That was a fantastic school, but it was quite a jump from where I'd been living. And suddenly I was really, really bullied, quite harshly bullied for a long time. And then as I kind of grew up, I kind of got this kind of title of Posh Totty. So wherever I went, it was like, here comes Posh Totty. And it was like, that was my label that was kind of put on me. For years it upset me. And then when I was trying to think of a business name, I thought, well, hang on, let's kind of use it.
Saved you a trip to the brand design shop, didn't it? That's
and it's kind of got a little bit of humour. We've gone through a few Trump moments where it's been like, oh, should I change the name? But it sticks with people. And
I was going to ask that. It has, so it's sort of, it's survived the test of time.
It has survived the test of time, but there are people that do kind of sometimes mention it, but I've kind of just had to get on with it and explain the story, the reason, and also it's tongue in cheek,
right.
And it's not run by a man, it's run by me, and ultimately, if I can laugh at it, then everyone else should be able to.
Well, let's move from the New Forest and Nottingham to Brighton, because that's where the business is headquartered.
Yes.
And a city renowned for its creativity.
Yes.
Also, right, in terms of the personality of the place. Has that helped you, do you think?
Oh my gosh, incredibly. Yeah. So when I first walked into Brighton, I knew that I had to live here. Literally, I'd been living in London and I went down to Brighton, walked in, and I was like, I've never seen anything so beautiful.
Right.
And my father grew up in San Francisco, so I spent a lot of time in San Francisco, and it kind of reminded me of San Francisco, and it was just so colourful and beautiful. And I knew immediately that I wanted to have a shop there. And that was like a new dream. I was like, okay, this is it. I need to have a shop here. I need to make my jewellery and I need to have a shop here. And that was it.
I think this conversation almost became like a travel show. We're going from Mexico to the New Forest to Nottingham, San Francisco, Brighton. I mean, but Brighton has a vibe, doesn't it?
Oh, it's incredible.
Right.
Yeah. And I still love it every single day. I still don't regret a moment of it. I'm like, this is my home.
So if you were to capture where the business is today, describe kind of like to listeners, what are you doing? What are you selling? Kind of like the mature business in terms of Posh Totty Designs in 2024, 25. How do you pitch it to the marketplace?
So I guess we have the biggest workshop in the Southeast where we're hand making our personalised, meaningful jewellery. We have our main store is based in Brighton on Sydney Street in the North Lane, right in the heart of it, where it all began. We also have a store in London, plus we have concessions worldwide, and we're on platforms across the world. We also do makes classes where we teach people how to make rings. We're really proud of our roots. We're really proud of the fact that every piece is handmade still in the UK, and it's all made from recycled metals and ethical stones. It's all a female team. The jewellers are all female, and we do a lot for charity, and we're really proud of what we do. And I love every day, so I really enjoy what I do, which is the main thing.
Let's just go back a bit. And you said it was your dream to have a shop, and then clearly that worked. But how did you open that shop? What were the steps? I mean, how did you translate the dream into actually getting the keys and just talk us through that for a bit?
So that's quite an interesting one, because basically I didn't have any money, as I was saying. I wasn't great at being employed, and I ended up getting a job in the North Lane working in a store for somebody else, where I learnt the trade. And actually I realised, and I remember all my family thinking, oh my gosh, she's been to university, she's travelled, she's done all these things, and now she's just working in a shop. And I was getting older and older, and I was still working in the shop, and they couldn't really see what my dream was, even though I knew what my dream was. And actually, through that, I basically learned the trade. I learned everything I needed to know. I learned about margins. I learned about pricing, all these things that nobody could really see.
For life.
Yeah, no one could see, because it was a tiny little shop. I learned how to get my own stuff into that shop. So I was like pushy, and I was like, you want my own jewellery, you want that. And it became the best-selling product that they had in the store, because I was the person selling it. And then from there, I kind of saved up and worked in the evenings, sold my pieces, did my first trade show at Top Drawer, where I managed to convince them that I could do the whole show in a 1 metre by 1 metre space, because that's all I could afford. And then kind of got the trade there to kind of be able to save the money to get a shop. And then again, I had to be pretty ballsy and convince them to let me have the smallest shop.
Did you ever have any doubt about it? I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs, their stories feel like they've, jumped from one success story to another. But actually, when you uncover a lot of those stories, there's a lot of inner questions, a lot of sense of risk, and all sorts of other issues. Did any of that occur to you?
I don't think I think I moved organically, so I didn't have any big wad of cash that suddenly sent me, that suddenly it was like, oh, okay, now I can move on to the next stage. It was all very slowly, and very carefully. And basically, I couldn't afford the rent on this place. Well, I could afford the rent, but I couldn't afford the lease. And so I had to convince this man that I was the best person for it, even though he had other people offering him more money. And I was like, you will change my life if you let me have this shop. And it did, and it totally did. And I was in this shop up an alley on the best street in town, but I was tucked away up an alley. And I used to get about 5 customers a week, if that. But one of them was Holly Tucker that walked in and wanted me on Not on the High Street. And then I basically became the first jeweller and the first person to do personalised. And I was already doing personalised in that store, but hadn't really been seen.
Right.
And suddenly it kind of transformed overnight. And we all became little elves.
And so the elven...
Suddenly it was like every friend, every family member come and help
Well, let's
me.
talk about the elven kingdom. I mean, it's sort of... I mean, you mentioned earlier you got an all-women team in terms of design. And I suppose that then brings the question to, like, how does a very specialist business like this find more people that can do this kind of work? Actually, I'd imagine that kind of access to people is really important in terms of how you scale and grow what I suppose is an artisan's business.
Yes, I would say that when I started 20 years ago, everybody was a jeweller. There were lots of jewellers around. Like, I mean, it felt like everybody was creative. And slowly but surely we've moved into a more kind of tech world, and everybody's into kind of web design and everything else. And it's really, really hard to find those artisans that are actually makers. And I think even the government in the local council in Brighton, they've always talked about supporting makers and supporting British, we want British made and everything. And then when you actually come to find that, it's near impossible. And then even today, after this, I've got a meeting with the council because of our building. They're not sure they want to have makers anymore because it's much better to just have people that are clean and they've got their nice Apple Mac computers and they're not making a mess, and it's kind of like, but how are we supposed to make and do this, so it's kind of, it's a complicated one because times have changed and it's harder. But that's why, for me, I think that the only way to do it is to train from the bottom. So we're now looking at people who have, if someone shows the ability and they're working in a cafe down the road, then it's like, oh, well, if you've got the drive and the determination and you actually think that you've got the eye for the detail, then come and try out and we'll see whether we can then train you. So we've got a lot of that. We've got an amazing female team who are incredibly good at that. But we do still need those goldsmiths and those stone setters. Sometimes, especially as we approach Christmas, we need those people that have got that ability to be able to just take on the job and
make it happen. I mean,
yeah.
Charlotte, we've spoken a lot about access to talent and people throughout these interviews. I mean, what's your take?
I mean, this is absolutely cool, right? And this is a story that we see again and again and again across all of our small businesses. But Alice, I mean, give us some context. How big is your team, and how hard is it to find those artisans, and talk us through some of the challenges that you're seeing?
So we basically have about 20 jewellers at Christmas. So and at the rest of the year we have a smaller team, and then we kind of obviously grow.
Right. Are they freelancers?
No, that every single person is on our books.
Right.
But we basically have Christmas through to Mother's Day, which is, half the year, where we will take on more people because we know that we can do the capacity. But actually, as our marketing has grown and our brand has grown, that is coming less and less. We're now actually evening it out throughout the year. So August has just been our biggest month of the whole year, which in the past has been our smallest month. So I'm very confused as to...
That's great.
Yeah, something's gone crazy, and I'm just going to enjoy it. But it does mean if August has been that crazy, that Christmas is going to be even crazier. So it's now like, okay, we've got to change all of our forecasts to kind of predict how many people we will need.
Oh, interesting.
And it's a really scary thing because it's materials, it's people. Materials have gone through the roof this year, and then it's people. People have gone through the roof as well because ultimately, it is a lot more expensive now than it's ever been. And then you're trying to find people who have got skill, and that's kind of harder, and they're not there. And I'm finding it hard even just to get someone to work in the shop at the moment. Like, there is definitely a shortage of people, and there's a shortage of people that want to work full time. It's near impossible to find someone that wants to work full time. They want to work 2 to 3 days a week. And you're like, no, but we need you. If we're going to train you and we're going to teach you how to do it all, then please, can you just at least try and work with us as many hours as, we're not making anyone work any more than 40 hours a week. We're making them work from 8 or 9 in the morning till 5, till 4 or 5 in the afternoon. There's nothing that we're doing outside of the norm. but it's near impossible to.
And has that changed since the pandemic?
That's
and with
definitely
the change
changed since the pandemic.
And actually, for a retail small business,
I think
that
people
impacts
feel,
you
massively, because I think people have relaxed. They've realised that actually
they've got choices, I guess.
But do they have choices? Because I don't know. And it's like this 4-day week. I think it's Brighton, so I think it's probably different.
I was going to say Brighton is one of those.
Everyone's very relaxed. Yeah. Everyone's very chill. Particularly in the summer, it's near impossible to get anyone to come to work. It's kind of like they want to be on the beach, but it is kind of like it's still. Like I had a work ethic that I'm not seeing so much anymore. If I'm being completely honest.
And is that? This is fascinating. So let's dive into it. Is it, coming out of school? Is it kind of post-school? Like, is it post-pandemic? What are you seeing with that work ethic?
I've got an incredible team, by the way, so I'm not even suggesting for a moment that I don't have a brilliant team. But I do think there's something about entitlement that I'm seeing coming through, and it's they think that they can say what they want and give you the demands, and then it's like you take it or leave it. So whereas I used to employ people, I used to recruit for people, and I would basically go through the, I would do the first interview, and then we may do second interview, third interview. Now it's like they send their CV in, and you contact them, and you say, "Yeah, great, you're ready for interview," and they go, "No, it's okay, I'm over it now."
How do you respond? I suppose.
And we're a sexy job, that's what I find.
A few things in the conversation I've been sort of thinking about. One is, the makers. Craftsmanship. If you go to,
they've got a talent that they can take elsewhere.
But I'm still thinking about like the response of the council, but also people coming on board. If you read the magazines, it is. The human touch is a premium, right? In terms of actually that kind of crafting and also British craftsmanship, I guess. I suppose, is it just thinking about what you've just said? How much of this is a responsibility of the employer to be better pitching what they do and the value of what they do to get people excited about it?
It is totally our responsibility, yes. But I've got a team that have been with me for at least 10 years. Most of my, so I've got a long-standing team who are very hardworking, very driven, and they love what they do. And then I've got people that I'm trying to get through the door now who don't even seem to want to come through the door. So they don't even want to see. So they're not getting close enough to really be able to see whether it is something that they want to do or not. They're not getting close enough. But I would have thought that to be offering the opportunity to make something, to be able to make a piece of jewellery, and then once you've learnt that, you can go and take it and do what you want with it in the future. You've suddenly got this new skill under your belt that you can then go and set up your own business and become an entrepreneur yourself. But they seem to be so short-sighted that they're not even seeing that there's this opportunity that they don't. I'm not tying them into anything. They just have to come and work for me, and then once they've learnt that, I want them to come and work for me, and I want them to have, to stay with me and be loyal. But ultimately, there isn't any tie in there. So they could go and set themselves up within a few months and do something themselves. If it was me, I would have that drive.
So the people question is tough. You mentioned, in passing, you mentioned kind of technology, but from the perspective of other sorts of businesses around you, in terms of the businesses that were locating near your shop. But in terms of how a business that kind of, I suppose, proudly presents itself as handmade jewellery, it does technology play a part these days? Yeah. And if so, how? Yeah.
So we're really interested in sustainability. One of the main things that we really encourage with our team and that we work really hard with, and we just work with the university on doing, trying to get to net zero plus. And, we've been working really hard on changing things. And one of them was that we basically were printing out lots and lots of orders. So thousands of orders. Every time an order came in, we can do 1,000 orders a day. And we were the only way, but we had scraps of paper that are highly flammable, especially if you're trying to solder jewellery. Yeah. So it was something needs to change. So we embrace change and we embrace technology, and we basically set about creating our own app that basically takes the orders from all of the different channels that they come into, and it basically takes it through to the workshop. And then everybody has a tablet on their bench where they can see every single order come through, and then and it's fielding those orders, and it means that it then goes through to quality control, and quality control can check it, and then they put it on their tablet, and then it goes through to dispatch, and it goes out the door, and everything is traced the whole way through. And that has changed our business. That was massive in changing our business, and it's made it so much more streamlined and so much more efficient. And it also means that we can be responsible for our own pieces, and we know what we're doing, and I can assign orders to the right jeweler that's good for each piece of the design. And it's also been great for sustainability because there's no paper. And then also in terms, I do all the designs, so I spend my time designing jewellery a lot of the time. And there's so much AI now that can kind of help me. It's like the drawings, and more about creating mood boards and stuff like that. I still do all the hand drawings of every design, but then I can use that technology to kind of make mood boards. And
I suppose
collaborate with other jewellers. And
adaptability and change is a lot of what we're talking about here, isn't it? It is actually how have businesses changed with their response to the employee market, technology. I mean, these are issues we're seeing across the board, aren't they, I guess?
Well, I think fundamentally it's about growth, and you are an extraordinary growth business. And you talked about, technology as an enabler for that, but also thinking through the barriers that you have to growth, and you talked about talent. Is that the biggest barrier that you're seeing? I'd love to hear a bit about your financing journey. And also on the flip side, where are the big opportunities? You mentioned at the beginning international concessions. So let's just hear about the growth side of this business and how you're finding it.
So we're incredibly fortunate that we are in control of our own cash flow. So we don't need to take any money at this stage. I'm always really.
Have you ever taken money?
No.
Amazing.
So I'm the sole director and 100% owner, and we don't have any kind of any debt. And I'm quite frugal. Like, I'm quite careful about how, because I came from nothing.
Yeah.
I'm quite
so you're
careful
going to bootstrap it
to
all
make
the time.
Sure, which in some ways is not great, because I should maybe try more, but instead I'm like, no, come on, we'll all stay safe. I think what I would to give
the audience context, and without disclosing anything, I mean, you're a multi-million-pound turnover business
with a big international market.
I mean, you are a very, very significant business, which is why actually the fact that you've bootstrapped this all is phenomenal to achieve that scale.
Thank you. But at the same time, I would say that the only place when I do start to look at like investors, and if I'm really honest, like when I look at investors, it's not the money I need, it's the expertise.
Yeah.
So what I want is people that can actually give me a helping hand go, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to get there, rather than like, I'll just give you a wad of cash, because a wad of cash ain't going to do much for me.
And you did the 10,000 Small Businesses program.
I did, and I learned an awful lot.
Well, tell us, what did you take out of the program?
I learned, one of the biggest things that I learned was that by putting up my prices, I was always scared of putting up my prices, because the one thing I've always felt like is that I want to be affordable for everybody. Like, I don't want my jewellery to just be for the rich. It was like, no, I want that young teenager that wants to buy his girlfriend a first piece of jewellery. I want to be available for them. And then I also want to, the old lady down the road that's been saving up for a granddaughter, I want to be able to afford them to be able to afford that. So I was always a bit cautious of putting my prices up. And then I got convinced to put my prices up by 8% because I hadn't put them up in years.
Through the programme?
Yeah, through the programme. And it was a 25% difference on my bottom line just by putting, it was a huge difference. Yeah. And I was like, because I failed maths at GCSE, and then and I've always been someone who's a bit like, I'm not great at maths, and yet I work with maths every single day of my life, and I am so passionate when it comes to the numbers. But do I know a spreadsheet? All my team know that everything has to be visual with me, because I'm like, I don't like a spreadsheet. It's like, so there's certain things that my team work with. And one of the biggest things is that I also employ people who are much smarter than me.
Now, we are fast approaching our allotted time, but I do want to just get two very quick thoughts in. I mean, you said something quite interesting earlier on about, which may have, we didn't really delve into, you said about keeping us safe. The organisation said actually that you maintain control, and that allowed you to keep us safe as an organisation. How do you approach risk as a business? Do you like risk? Do you work well with it? How does it figure in your thinking?
So I recently got asked that question, like I did the test, and they said that I'm risk averse. But I love change. So I'm a real change maker in the respect that I get really excited. I get real ants in my pants if things aren't changing quickly. And I'm like, come on, we can do more, we can do better, we can, but so I do like change, but I like it to be careful and considered, I'm not going to go out there and just be stupid. And it's not an ego thing for me either. So I love what I do, and I would really love for Posh Totty Designs to outlive me and pass it on to the next generation, or pass it on to someone who really cares about it, and kind of really develop the brand globally. But I also don't want to go into it thinking it's all about me and make stupid mistakes and do something wrong. And that's what I've seen in business, is quite a few egos along the way.
Careful change, Charlotte. How does that phrase speak to you?
I think it's very smart. Very smart. I mean, this is your baby that you've built and nurtured, right?
Yeah.
And it obviously, needs to grow, but you need to be very aware of the risks, which you are, and the fact that you're thinking so actively about succession, I think, is very smart. But I'd also, before we wrap, I'd like to touch on the fact that you're a female business leader, and you said you employ an all-female team, which I think is phenomenal.
I've got actually to just change that. I do have 3 men, including one of them being my husband.
Okay.
Okay.
So in the workshop, it's female, but
Never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
In the workshop, female, but in the So he's in dispatch.
So that's now two questions. So how have you found it being a prominent female business leader, and then also, frankly, how is it? I guess your husband works for you, and what's that dynamic like?
It's incredible, actually. He's brilliant, and he's amazing, and he's the kind of person that we'll go out for dinner and he'll be sat there having to talk about business because he's as passionate about it as I am. And our poor kids have grown up with it as well, but now they're starting to come into the business as well. My 16-year-old son worked this summer for me, and he now, when we were on holiday, he was like literally chatting to me about I've got these ideas, and it was really lovely to see. So he's embracing it, and it's lovely. But it's grown from a really small seed to something big, and it was never expected. I just was more than happy to be a shopkeeper up the alley in a little shop, and it kind of developed naturally. And as such, I kind of want to enjoy the ride and see where I can take it.
I'd imagine family business speaks to you on a number of different levels, does it? In terms of your team, your family involved.
And it's lovely. And I've got a very caring, considerate family and team. I see my team like my family, and they're an incredible team. So,
not to leave Charlotte's point about being a female leader, just a quick word on that in terms of how that has sort of inspired your journey.
I think it's inspired my team. I think it makes them work all the more harder about, we're all about that, and we work with lots of different charities that are always pushing boundaries, and, we work with Women for Women International, and I went out to Kosovo and worked with them. And, anything we can do to kind of support. And basically, one of the things I'd really love to do long term is look at kind of mentoring more women in business, because I think although we think things have changed, they haven't changed that much. And there's still a long way to go.
Right. The Mayans were famous for magic. So if we were to have a last question where we were to wave a magic wand and allow you to speak to the Alice of the backpack traveller, the person that was trying to work it all out, what's the advice you'd give to yourself?
Follow your gut. Always follow your gut. And also don't sweat the small stuff.
Great advice yourself. I hope you listened. Thanks for joining us on Changemakers.
Thank you.